If I were to ask you what makes a good leader, what would you say? As a passionate history enthusiast, I have studied about the quote-unquote good or bad leaders that have graced the stage of the world ever since I was about able to read. In learning about these different leaders, none captivated me so much as the ones who swear to protect, defend, and enrich our beloved United States. In other words, the presidents. America has seen 46 presidents in office up to date, each coming and going with different opinions of the influence they had in our country, or even simply if they were good or bad. While everyone is entitled to their own opinion, it is important to recognize that we are not always the most informed. So today, I'm going to tell you about some of the worst ranked presidents in history and why they were actually good for the United States. So first of all, we're going to look at Richard Nixon. So some general biographical information about President Nixon. He was born in 1913, and he was president number 37. And he served his presidency for 4 years, so only one term. So you probably know Nixon from the infamous "I am not a crook" speech. It was actually very convincing at the time. He had very good public speaking skills. But, as we'll soon find out, that was all a lie. What you also probably know him for is the Watergate scandal, when a few of his employees broke into the headquarters, the Democratic headquarters, and stole information. Now, Nixon claimed to have no involvement in this, but as we would figure out through tapes and other things, this was not true. This led to him being the sole president to resign from office on account of his tendency to be a little bit of an irresponsible liar. But what we often don't know about Nixon and what we choose to forget is his forgotten influences. For instance, he played a huge part in ending the Vietnam War, which was a very big source of conflict for the United States. And in this way, he worked towards peaceful relationships between world leaders all over the place, all over the country and all over the world. So, was he a crook? I'll let you decide. But he certainly was a very dynamic personality that had lots of influence on one side and another side. Our next president we're going to talk about is John Tyler. Who is this guy? I'm sure that he's not one of the ones you used to learning in history class. And I know this because I've asked a lot of you guys in this past week. So John Tyler was dubbed His Accidency by his peers in Congress. Just think about that for a moment. His accidency. You're an accident. You're being called an accident as president. So that isn't a great start, but I digress. Anyway, John Tyler was born in 1780, and he was the 10th president of the United States. He also only served for 4 years. Not too bad for being an accident. But his infamous claim to fame, he was an ardent Confederate supporter through and through. Slavery, the Confederacy, he was all over that. In fact, he was the only president to be buried with the Confederate flag instead of our normal stars and stripes. This is how diehard this guy is into his cause. But this didn't sit well with lots of other people, considering this is around the time of the Civil War. And it is in this way that he was the first president to have impeachment filed on account of his unpopular opinions. But some of his forgotten influences, the log cabin bill, which helped a lot of settlers in this area as they were moving west. And he also played a huge part in the annexation of Texas. Some of you probably know that Texas used to just kind of be by itself, not a state. It was called the Republic of Texas. And John Tyler was a very big part in annexing Texas to the whole United States, so we have it as a state today. So if you like Texas, thank John Tyler. Lastly, we have President Herbert Hoover. He was born in 1874, and he was the 31st president of the United States. And he also only served for 4 years. Notice a pattern here. And his infamous claim to fame was that he's kind of responsible for the Great Depression, which is what a lot of people think. Some of you guys have probably read The Grapes of Wrath in Mr. Throne's class. We learn a lot about President Hoover in there. And some people really disliked him, obviously. And they went as so far to name the poverty-stricken shanty towns after him. They called them Hoovervilles. Just in case you're wondering, that's not something you want to be named after you. But he was also blamed a lot for the stock market crash of the Great Depression, which also kind of led him down in the we don't want to talk about you, we don't want to re-elect you area. But some of his forgotten influences. He used his great experience in humanitarian aid to help those affected by the Depression, although this wasn't really recognized because we were too busy trying to find a scapegoat for our problems in that time. He also created many government programs to lend aid, and he planned for the Hoover Dam, which is a very important and recognizable architectural structure in America. In conclusion, while we may remember these presidents for the things they did wrong, there are substantial ways that Nixon, Tyler, and Hoover all contributed to the success of America. If nothing else, they serve as a reminder for us that no person is completely bad or good, and that they have the potential to do great things, and sometimes great mistakes. Thank you.